Hello, friends, comrades, and interested others. This is the third video in what will be my 101 series where we will explore some basic community organizing skills. In my last video, we talked about what different organizing models are and what they're used for. And in this video, we'll talk about how to set a goal for an organizing campaign and how to break that goal down into achievable tasks. When planning or engaging in an activist campaign, it's important to distinguish between goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics. Your goal is the thing that you wish to achieve, and when setting goals, it's good to follow the SMART rule. A SMART goal is a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. For a goal to be specific, it needs to be something that has a clear definition and can be visualized. For example, save the world is not a very specific goal. However, something like establish a ban on the distribution of single-use plastics is a specific goal. For a goal to be measurable, it needs to be something that you can actually see the progress of. So, for example, improve the lives of low-income people is something that might be hard to measure, versus something like institute a livable minimum wage is a measurable goal. An achievable goal is something that you can actually realistically accomplish. For example, in Canada, the goal of organize a revolution might not be a very achievable goal for an individual or small group to take on. However, something like raise awareness of economic exploitation among rural working people is something that might be achievable and could lay the groundwork for broader forms of change later on. A relevant goal is something that fits into the circumstances of the community's needs and priorities. For example, if you're living in a rural town in North America, something like having a concert fundraiser to raise money for animals being exploited in Germany might not be the most relevant to the specific needs of the community that you're working within, versus something like, let's start a harm reduction service to prevent opiate overdoses. For a goal to be time-bound, it needs to be something that you can map out on a timeline and set specific dates and goals for when it will be achieved. So now that we've discussed what a goal is, an objective is a necessary accomplishment on the way to achieving that goal. For example, if your goal was to organize a union, then one of your objectives might be to start a committee. Now, a strategy is the overall guiding principle that you use to accomplish your goals, and tactics are methods that you employ in particular instances in order to accomplish specific tasks. To use the example of anti-fascist organizing, a common strategy is we go where they go. So wherever there is a fascist presence, there should be an anti-fascist presence. This is the guiding principle that informs many different tactics used in that kind of organizing. In anti-fascist circles, there is also the common phrase diversity of tactics, which means that one should be creative and take on many different types of work towards the end of combating fascist ideology. You can go out and protest, but you can also do things like infiltrating online groups, doing street art and postering, or starting support groups to help people who are trying to get out of white nationalist organizations. So while counter-demonstrating may be the most visible tactic used by anti-fascists, it is not their entire strategy. For the purpose of this video, we're going to be running through the steps of an activist campaign by using the example of organizing a public food garden. Public food gardens are something that is universally necessary, and especially under our current climate situation, we're going to need to have local permaculture projects set up in pretty much every neighborhood in the next few years if we're going to want to mitigate food instability. So I think something like this is a good place to start, given that it's a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Many of the organizing steps I'll outline here can be scaled to apply to different projects. That being said, there is a huge diversity of strategies, tactics, information, and experiences to draw upon depending on what you're trying to do. Whatever goal you'd like to accomplish, I do recommend doing some specific research on that particular topic. So to start off, we've got a goal. We want to start a public food garden, but we might not know how to garden, where to plant one, how to get the resources, or who will help us. So at this point, it might seem difficult to achieve. But the rule to success, both in activism and life in general, is to break your goals down into objectives, and then break those objectives down into achievable tasks. An important thing to note here, and I cannot stress this enough, is to write everything down. Keep a day planner, a notebook, a binder, a file on your computer, and for every step of the process be writing down what you're doing, what you've done, and what your plans are. This will keep you organized and on track when setting timelines for tasks, and it will also help keep other people organized. It will also act as a record of this project because you will be accruing important knowledge and experience throughout this process. Ideally, you want to develop skills and knowledge that you can share with other people, so that if your project is successful and some people in the next town over want to do something similar, those people don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just hand them a package and be like, here, this is what we did, this is how we got our funds, this is who we talked to, this is how we organized ourselves and what our timeline was. This is how we do knowledge sharing and build momentum as a movement. So in order for us to start this garden, what are we going to need? Well, we're going to need constituents, people with whom to organize and execute this project. We're going to need space for the garden, and we're going to need funds and resources in terms of tools, plants, gardening materials, and other things that we might need. So when we're getting started, these will be our first objectives, and then when we're organizing with other people, we will break these objectives down into smaller tasks. For constituents, you might want to start off by establishing a visioning committee. This will be a small group of people who can come together and set the vision for what they'd like the project to look like. These people can then reach out to their own networks to get more people involved in planning, organizing, and executing it. So you can start by asking yourself who would like to work on a project like this, and who has skills that they could contribute. Think about people who like plants and have free time, people who have experience with gardening and permaculture, and people who have administrative skills who could help organize volunteers and apply for grants and space. So you can make a task of finding maybe 6 to 10 people who have an interest in working on this project. So where are you going to find these people? Well, start with people that you know and move outward. If you have any friends that have free time and like plants, try to get them on board. Outside of that, start looking at other community groups in your area. Find out if there's a local gardening club, or community food program, or groups for farming, permaculture, or climate justice, and start reaching out to those people. People who are retired can be amazing allies because they often have a wealth of knowledge and experience and plenty of free time, so try to avoid organizing with only younger people. Once you have a group of people who want to work on this project, you can have a meeting to start planning, set a visioning statement, a timeline for the project, and begin delegating tasks. Members of the visioning committee should try to bring in as many people from their own networks as necessary in order to build a larger pool of constituents and volunteers. So now you've got some constituents, you've got a vision, you've set a timeline, and let's say you want to begin planting this garden a year from now. Where are you going to plant it? The first option would be to submit a project proposal to your local municipal office of Parks and Recreation, or whatever equivalent ministry manages the distribution and use of public land, and ask them to allot a section of land to your project. Alternatively, you could look at collaborating with a local organization that already owns some land, such as a community center or church. You could even look into residential options, finding homeowners who are willing to contribute sections of their land for cultivation in exchange for some of the produce yielded. So there are all sorts of options for finding space, and you should make sure to investigate all available options within your network to determine what arrangement is going to be best for your project. For any of these options, you will need to draft a project proposal and submit it to the people you're looking to collaborate with. I've included a link to some examples of community project proposals in the description. So just to recap, in this video we learned about the difference between goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics, and we discussed the SMART system of what defines a good goal. We started working through the steps of organizing a public food garden, including developing a constituency, setting a vision statement and timeline, and applying for space for our project. In the next video, we'll talk about fundraising, consulting, executing the project, and reflection and evaluation. I hope this video was helpful and informative. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you'd like to have a conversation, you can leave your comments down below. I've included a couple of further reading links in the description, as well as a link to my Twitter, PayPal, and Patreon, so if you'd like to buy me a coffee or help support some of the community organizing work that I'm doing, both in real life and here on YouTube, you're welcome to support me with a one-time or recurring monthly donation. Happy organizing, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.